You might not understand yet, but your daddy's gonna make a transaction, a business transaction. It's gonna change our lives. That's why one day when you're about 17, I'll come home and I'll be pretty tired, you know what I mean, after a day of conferences and secretaries getting things wrong the way they do, because an executive's life is hard, man. And I'll pull the car up to the driveway. Just a plain black Chrysler with white walls. No, black tires. Rich people don't have to be flashy. Though I'll have to get something a little sportier for Ruth. Maybe a Cadillac convertible to do her shopping in. And I'll come up the steps to the house and the gardener will be clipping away at the hedges. And he'll say, "Good evening, Mr. Younger." And I'll say, "Hello, Jefferson. How are you this evening?" And I'll come inside and Ruth will meet me at the door and we'll kiss. And she'll take my arm and we'll go upstairs to your room. See you sitting on the floor with all your catalogs of all the great schools in America around you, all the great schools in the world. And I'll say, "All right, son, it's your 17th birthday. What is it you decided? Where do you want to go to school? Just tell me and you'll go. Just tell me what you want to be and you'll be it. Just name it, son, and I'll hand you the world."
Welcome to DSM's Black Art Matter series. We're here today with Bryan Pitts, a Dallas-based performer and actor. Welcome, Bryan.
Thank you for having me.
Good. How are you doing today?
Excellent.
Fantastic. So we're going to jump right in. So our first question is a bit of a loaded one, and it's one that we ask all of our guests first and foremost. And what does Black identity mean to and for you?
So for me, I have to realize who I am. Like, I don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I carry that. I am that. I must, I must be it, all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't think it means, be any certain way, but it's understanding that your experiences and your upbringing and things that have happened in your life and the people in your life mm-hmm. and their experiences have influenced you to be who you are. And for everyone, that's unique. Yeah. The Black experience is unique. The white experience is unique. It's just that I don't feel like everyone can understand because they either haven't been told those stories mm-hmm. About the Black experience or they just, haven't reached out. So for me, it's just something I carry.
I love that notion of something you carry and something like you just be it. Do you think that sits differently with Black individuals than it does with other individuals, specifically white individuals?
I think it does as a person of color or as a person that might not be in the majority mm-hmm. or have a majority voice. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, just because you might feel like you need to carry the torch or you might need to speak up maybe more than others because you might not feel that representation is there. There's a lot of talk about diversity and a lot of talk about inclusion and belonging, right? The issue for me is not that I don't want to hear your voice, it's just we just need to hear more voices. Yeah. And it's okay, acknowledge that and act on it. Mm-hmm. It's all about what are we going to do about it? I don't want to hear the complaint. I want to hear, what are we going to do? What's the next
action
thing?
Steps? Yeah.
So, it's definitely different.
Yeah. So when you're having conversations, either in your work or in your personal life about, that concept of, it's not that I don't want to hear your voice, it's just when is your voice needed right now and that we need more voices. How's that normally taken by other individuals?
It depends on the audience. You have to pick your spots with everything, it's just a matter of knowing how to say things or who to say them to because everyone isn't, going to receive it the same way. And you might need to phrase it a certain way. It comes down to knowing people. Mm-hmm. I think there's just this general prejudice that everyone has, biases and things that we have. And it's a matter of either putting those aside or, saying, hey, I acknowledge this, I need to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And say, okay, now I know I feel this way before I even go into the conversation so I can adjust. And I don't know if people like to adjust. Right. I work in computer support, so a lot of times I'm getting problems. So I say, I know I can talk to this person this way. I know I can talk to that person a different way. And I try to build those relationships so there's that trust there to where we can communicate effectively back and forth.
Do you think that that adjustment that a lot of people of color experience having to do is the same for those who might have the majority voice like you mentioned?
No.
And is that, let's talk about fairness then, is that fair that people of color have to carry on that?
Well,
should we even have to?
I will say this, life is not fair. for anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the degrees of fairness.
Right.
Dynamics are a thing.
Mm-hmm.
People act the way they act, and they believe things they believe for whatever reason. And, it all comes down to knowing yourself for me. I can't engage in a relationship, friendship, business relationship with somebody wholly and fully unless I know myself, because I know the things I don't like about myself. I know my weaknesses. If I adjust to fit into what they expect me to be, I'm not being myself. Right? But if I know myself, I can be myself all the time. Nobody can be a better me than me.
Mm-hmm.
I can be a pretty sorry somebody else, but nobody can be a better me than me. So if being me is 100%, I think I'm doing it right.
That's a great way to put that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious now how, your Black identity has shaped and crafted your artistic identity.
I would say it's kind of that whole who's telling the stories. Because we have a lot of stories that are centered around maybe a whiter culture or a non-Black culture, shall we say, or a non-minority culture. The focus is on Black people because we are asking, we are pushing. I think there was a time when maybe the Latin American community was pushing, or maybe the Chinese or the Japanese people were pushing because of things that were happening in society and the social norms that were changing about how they were being treated. The thing is, you want to be better. And if you're striving to be better, you're doing all right. I am a person, I literally started going to therapy after George Floyd's funeral because I had never talked about those feelings I had. When I saw other people get killed, Tamir Rice, names can go on and on. Anybody, literally anybody. Of course, it felt different when it was someone Black, but I said, man. And I'm a person that gets mistaken for a cop all the time.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go, they're like, you must be security, you must be a cop, you must be some authority figure. And for me, I never thought of it, I never just sat down and tried to process all of those feelings I had about that. I have very close family members that are former law enforcement, current law enforcement, military, and things like that. And I just had to process all of those thoughts. That was a long answer.
That was a great answer, and a lot of follow-ups I have from that. So, you not being able to process those before the murder of George Floyd, what do you think influenced your inability to do that? Was it just society norms saying, Black men don't process these feelings? Or was it just something that you just didn't think you had to think about?
I think it was both. I never thought to go to therapy. I never said I need to address these things because it was always like, well, you'll just figure it out on your own. You'll adjust. You don't need to get help. You don't need to ask for help. You don't need to let anyone know that you're hurting. I told my friends, I said, I wrote 2 letters, one to my manager and one to my boss. And I told them, I don't feel good. I am hurting. I cry every day, multiple times a day. I just sit around and cry. I'm not like bawling and, but the emotions are coming out of me. And I need to find out what that is so I can not do it every day because something is making me do that. So it's something I had to say, okay, I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to address these things with myself and recognize these things that I have going on inside that I had repressed and said, don't worry about it. And it festered and festered. It grew and grew and grew. And then it just blew up and came out of me. So once I started to address those things, it helped.
Thank you for sharing that very vulnerable piece of information. I would love to tie that to your work as an actor because actors are trained to take a deep dive into the emotions of the characters they're portraying. So after your therapy experience and realizing that yes, you needed to reach out for help and look within about what you yourself are feeling as a person, did that change the way you started to look at roles you were playing or considering playing?
I think the acting helped me therapeutically before I went to therapy because I could dive into other people's lives, other people's situations, other people's experiences as much as you can as an actor, right? And I think it was understanding other people's point of views and saying those words and figuring out why are they saying those words, because those words come from somewhere. It's all about the why, right? The actors are, why are you doing that? What's your point? What's your intention? All those things, right? So I had to figure those things out for me personally because I could jump into a character and do it. because it was all, I could write it out. But for me, I couldn't do that. I had to figure it out and then assign a meaning to it. So it didn't change the way I thought of myself as an actor. It changed the way I thought of myself as a person. And then I was like, okay. And now I can reach into that emotional catalog.
Right, and because you can now reach into that emotional catalog of your own feelings, I'm curious of how much more of you do you bring into a rehearsal room, to a character, to a show, versus before you kind of had that deeper emotional connection with yourself.
I will say also it comes down to the audience. How receptive is your director? Mm-hmm. How receptive is the company you're working with to that feedback? Because we can dive deep all day, mm-hmm. but as many actors know, you might not have that luxury of time.
Right. You
might have 2 weeks to do rehearsal, table work, blocking, mm-hmm. all that lights,
right.
tech, So I go as deep as they allow me to go, and it's just a great conversation. Of course, you just have to cut it off at some point.
Right.
So, like you said, that emotional catalog has given me a broader range to choose from. So it's been helpful. But at the same time, I have to know sometimes just rein it in, make a choice. Okay, that's good. Yeah. I know you could do it 5 different ways. I know, because you're brilliant. And I think it's helped me when I talk to other actors, because I think we need to make sure we're lifting each other up and we're encouraging one another, because in an industry where you hear no 80% of the time, 75% of the time, whatever number, you need to know the victories are still there. Right. You need to find those places where you win. That is another thing I kind of bring over from IT, because I'm getting problems all day. Mm-hmm. No one comes to me and says, hey, just want you to know, I got all my emails today and my computer turned on.
Everything worked wonderful.
Everything worked. No, only the bad. So I think it's perspective. You just try to keep a proper perspective, right. But maybe leaning more toward the positive side of things.
So you've worked at virtually every theater here in Dallas. An incredibly impressive resume. At a moment in time where it feels like our city's artistic scene is on fire, what are your thoughts about where we stand right now as a city artistically?
We have to get creative. We have to adjust. We have to figure out how to move forward, mm-hmm. because the old way might not work. Mm-hmm. The definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. If you are doing the same thing and you're not getting the desired result, you have to change, mm-hmm. or you're going to fail and you'll just disappear. Mm-hmm. So I think, putting shows online, putting shows maybe in a different venue outside, I've been able to do some readings outside, and it's that flexibility that I think we're having to find. Mm-hmm. Partially by force, right. by law, and then the actors have to take the journey with them. The directors have to take the journey with them. But those leaders have to have that foresight and say, "Oh, I thought of a different way to do that," or get feedback from an actor and say, "I don't feel comfortable doing it this way. Can we try this way?" And I think those doors haven't necessarily been open, but I think we're forcing those doors open now, and I think it's good. Yes. I think it's good.
So, speaking of forcing those doors open, after the murder of George Floyd, in the middle of the pandemic, we saw many theaters make a lot of promises. And then they had a year and a half to sit on that promise and to hopefully work on those promises and implementing change. That way we came back as a better city artistically. And now that we're opening back up, we're producing more, things are on our stages, we're seeing some theaters keeping promises, we're seeing some theaters continue to work on their promises, and then some theaters flat out fail and break their promises. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, working in this industry before these promises were made, and now after these promises are made, are you shocked at where some theaters are? Did you expect maybe to see, yeah, that theater did that, no shock there?
I think about these things often because I, being a person that's 6 foot tall, 230 pounds, my message sounds different mm-hmm. than maybe someone that isn't a jock-looking guy. That being said, I try to make sure I'm giving the proper message in the proper way at the proper time. I am not surprised by what's happening because we're dealing with humans.
Yeah.
The issue is the accountability of those actions. Because I don't have a problem with you choosing what to do, but you don't get to choose the repercussions or the accountability that comes with that.
Right.
So I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And people are stubbing their toes, and people are saying things and making statements, and I'm kind of like, I don't know why you said that, or I don't know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Because some people, I don't think, know how to say things. They don't know how to convey messages, and that's a matter of getting better.
Yeah.
You want to get better at that? Okay. Because I feel like there are pioneers that do things, and they change things. They change things because things are wrong, or something bad happens, because someone died, or because there was an injustice. So once those things are acknowledged and addressed, then you can move forward. But you have to be okay and say, yeah, I don't know how to do this, because we're all learning. We are forced to learn. As people, we have to learn. We have to adjust. It's just a matter, are you adjusting in a way to make yourself better, or are you adjusting just to get by because you're afraid of the change, or you're afraid something's going to happen? I don't feel like anybody can take what's for me. If it's for me, it's for me. And every opportunity is for me, and I'm not for every opportunity.
Right.
I audition for shows. Sometimes I have to say, I know I really want to do this show, but I can't. Or I want to work with this person, but I can't. Or this company, but I can't. And I have to be okay with that, so I can govern myself. Because sometimes you're auditioning for the next one,
right,
and the next one,
right.
And they'll be like, yes, I remember that person. They were great. They just didn't fit at this time in this setting. Those. My big thing is 3 questions. Is this right for me? Or is this the right thing? Is this the right thing for me? And is this the right thing for me right now? I go through those questions with almost every opportunity I have. It's exhausting, but I think the time needs to be taken to adjust those things, to adjust to those things, because you can't take every opportunity.
So a lot of colleagues I talk to across different theaters will refer to the time we're in right now as this new reawakening of social and racial justice. And when I hear that, for me, that signals that this is somehow new and that this fight hasn't been going on for generations. I'm curious, from your perspective, why do you think it took, a 9-minute video of a black man dying in order for change to be spurred within the artistic community?
People don't know. We have a time where people are denying actual historical facts. You look back at the time when the girls were killed in the church bombing. You look back at the time when people were sprayed with water hoses. That opened eyes because they saw it.
Right.
I can pretend like things didn't happen if I didn't see it. There was no record of it. There are people that still don't know about internment camps. There are people that still don't know about a lot of things that have actually happened. And sometimes when they get the knowledge of those things, it does change their perspective. How it does, it's anyone's guess. And how receptive they are is anyone's guess. Because they might still feel the same way, but they just don't know. And people are not, I don't know if the same value is being put on history or being put on what people's experiences are, because I value your experience. Controversial take of today. I'm not a person that says my truth. If you want to say that, that's fine. I just want to know your experience. There is the truth, which is the measure by reality, is the standard by which reality is measured, right? But your experience is your experience,
right.
And I need to hear that. I need to acknowledge it, right? Because that was your experience, and that made you react the way you reacted, or made you believe what you believe, or made you the person you are, right? So I need to acknowledge that, but then it's like, okay, what are we gonna do with that? What's the action after that?
Right.
Because maybe I need to adjust to you. So.
Thank you. You put things in such a clear way. I'm like, yes, all of that. Put that on a poster and send that to every theater in town right now.
But the thing is, I want the discussion.
Yeah.
And Denise Lee has discussions. There are community discussions, and that's where I feel like it just needs to be something we can bring up and talk about, because everybody has an opinion. But you have to figure out why that opinion they have is so grounded in them, and they don't want to hear anybody else's, or they do want to hear someone else's, they just don't know who to ask, or they're afraid to ask. So once those conversations start, then we can start to work through the multitude of problems we have.
So you brought up accountability earlier. I'm curious, from an actor's point of view, what do you think the role of the actor is in holding our institutions accountable for positive and courageous change?
I think the conversations have to start. We have to start telling people how we feel about things. I was talking to a colleague at my other job about, she's like, I don't know how to help. She's like, I want to help the Black community. And in my brain, I'm thinking, I'm not sure. Okay, I'm going to receive that because that's the best way you know how to say it.
Yes.
And it's not a bad thing. You were being very honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, you're a woman. You've had struggles. You've had situations where you felt uncomfortable or where you felt like you were treated differently, or you heard somebody say something about women and you were like, yeah, that was, out of line.
Right.
Okay, so how do you want to be treated? You want to be treated like a friend? You want to be treated like someone that is cared about? And your feelings and your emotions and your experience about that, how do we address that? Do we change the person that perpetrated those injustices against you? Or do you need to adjust? That's where we have to start. So once we can start having those conversations and saying, oh, I didn't know you felt that way, or oh, I didn't know you experienced that when I did that thing. Because words are the most difficult or sometimes the least powerful tool we have to communicate. If I cry, you don't have to know anything about what's going on. You know I'm hurt, and I'm not gonna cry. But if I cry, I don't have to tell you, well, I'm sad. No, you know. So if you can start getting past that, I need you to explain everything to me, but I need you to communicate with me. There's a difference between saying something and communicating, right? It's just that sometimes people don't know the words to use.
For you personally, how many times can an institution say, I just didn't know, before you say, well, time's up?
I would say it depends on the situation, because I don't expect everyone to know everything. And every experience isn't for everyone to know. And sometimes people just don't know. There are a lot of things I don't know. Once again, I work in IT where there are a lot of smart people.
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't want to admit when they don't know. I'm not that person. I say, I don't know what that is. Let me look it up. Or let me find out. I can find someone to tell you what that is. Because I don't want to be the source of all knowledge. I am not the oracle. I do not want that kind of pressure. I like to go home and go to sleep. I don't want people calling me, asking me questions. I want the expertise in these things. And I will be stretched appropriately and made uncomfortable to where I need to learn something different. But as long as you admit you don't know, we can make a change. But if you just say, oh yeah, I already knew that. Did you? You sure? I'm not sure. Let's explain it to me. Teach me about it then. But I think that's the first thing you have to admit. Maybe there needs to be a change in the person that's doing the knowing. That's another thing.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there are term limits on certain positions, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you got to get a different voice, a different mind in there.
Bryan, you have shared so much knowledge and info with us today, and I could talk to you for like 2 more hours if we had the time to here. But I have one final question for you as we wrap up today's interview, and that is, what are your hopes for the future of this community as we move forward from where we were pre-pandemic to going through a pandemic to now reopening and going through some of the racial reckoning that we're going through currently? What are your hopes for this city artistically?
We need to tell more stories. I love the classics of any genre, but there are different stories being written because people's experiences aren't the same. I went and followed one of my friend's Instagram accounts and I was looking at the art she was making and I was like, wow, the things that are going on in this child's mind to express it in this art, how are we capturing that? Because the stories are changing. People's experiences are changing. We have different family dynamics. We have people, internal dynamics are different for people. And I might not agree with it all, but I want to hear it because I need to know what people are going through if I need to relate to them. Because sometimes maybe I don't. I don't want to put myself in a situation where we're both uncomfortable. That's just crazy. So I'm hoping we can get to the point where we're getting to know each other, we're getting to hear each other's stories, and we can appreciate them. Or you have to have an opinion that you don't like it. That's fine. Just express it in a way that's not being an asshole, as I've heard people say. And it's just the respect, perspective, and listening.
Bryan, thank you so much for sharing your time and talents with DSM. We appreciate it more than we can express here today. And everything you've shared today, we appreciate so much, giving us this giving us the time for you to do that. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much.